just to conclude on what is Greater Israel, Netanyahu has espoused this for 30 years. As I say, there are two strands. One, a kind of security argument that Israel can only be safe as Greater Israel. And the second, a religious argument that this is God's purpose. And this is therefore redeeming God's purpose by the Jewish people. And both of these now sit together in Israeli politics. I should quickly add that the religious view rose after 1967, in particular, with hundreds of thousands of illegal settlers from Israel into the Palestinian occupied lands. Illegal settlements because you're not allowed to settle occupied territory that needs to be returned to the rightful political entity, not Israel, but to a Palestinian entity. And yet hundreds of thousands of settlers came in, some because they wanted swimming pools and more land, but many others for religious purposes that form this Jewish supremacist idea now that is in government. So this has developed over decades. Final point, sorry to go on, but the final point is that when Netanyahu came in, he had strong American backing and strong American advisors. And the idea was the following. Greater Israel would lead to militant resistance. After all, it's a denial of the political right of self-determination of the Palestinian Arab people. And the UN General Assembly has said that not only do the Palestinians have the right of self-determination, but they have the right of armed struggle for self-determination. That idea is not outside of international law. The right of armed struggle for self-determination has been recognized repeatedly by the UN General Assembly, in fact. So Netanyahu and his American advisors said, well, we are going to stand for Greater Israel. We know this will be trouble. There will be resistance, what they call terrorism, what others call the struggle for self-determination. You know, it's all in the rhetoric and the eye of the beholder. But what Netanyahu said was very pertinent, and he was backed by the U.S. Neoconservatives. He said that you don't root out what they call the terrorism, and others would call those for armed struggle for self-determination. You don't root them out by fighting those militants. You root them out by overturning the governments of those who support the militants. So you don't defeat Hamas per se or Hezbollah per se. You have to fight the governments that support those militant groups. That's their ideology. Again, I find it repulsive because the way to fight an armed insurgency is to sit down and negotiate a political solution in which there is the rights of political self-determination of the Palestinian people. And that's what ideas like the two-state solution have proposed since 1997 and actually back to 1947. But for Netanyahu, this is armed struggle, and armed struggle that has to be crushed. And the way to crush what he calls the terrorism is to overturn other governments. Now, he captured American politics. It's true. Israel, under Netanyahu, successfully mobilized American politics for the cause of Greater Israel. This is rather shocking. It's also a very complicated story of American politics. And it's not a simple story. Of course, there were American Jews that were part of that lobby. There was the direct engagement of Israel in American politics relentlessly. But there's also another complicated piece of Americana, which is the Christian evangelicals like Huckabee, who constitute tens of millions of voters, heavily concentrated in the Republican Party and in Trump's voter base. So they also, by biblical terms, say, well, that's Israel's. By the way, they don't say it because they love the Jews or they love Israel. They say it because they read the Bible that the condition for the second coming of Jesus Christ is Israel's control over this land. So they read it as prophecy, not as somehow a gift to the Jewish people. In fact, they think in their biblical interpretation coming from the book of Revelation, the Jews are going to die in the final struggle, or they're going to be converted, or they're going to be condemned in the final judgment. It's all very, very weird. But from 1996 onward, the American government has basically backed the Greater Israel Project. And it has gone to war constantly to fight Israel's claim to overturn governments that were supporting Palestinian rights. And Iraq is a classic case. The 2003 U.S. war on Saddam Hussein to overthrow the Iraqi government was completely pretextual. It was based on absolutely deliberate propaganda that the U.S. had to invade Iraq after 9/11 to prevent Iraq from getting, or to dismantle its weapons of mass destruction, which then were shown not to exist at all. And they said, oh, so sorry, we thought they existed. No, they knew they didn't exist. This was a Netanyahu neoconservative plan to overthrow a government that was supporting the Palestinian cause on a pretext, on a lie, a war on utter lies. And this has gone on now for 30 years. And just about all the wars in the region, in one way or another, include the CIA and Mossad and Greater Israel as a motivation. So overthrowing Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which was a CIA operation called Operation Timber Sycamore, signed by Obama in 2012, 2013, tasking the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, was also at the behest of Greater Israel. Why? Because Assad had links with Iran, and Iran was seen as the supporter of Hamas and Hezbollah, and hence this axis of resistance, so-called, needed to be defeated by overthrowing Bashar al-Assad. That turned out to be a 15-year bloody war caused by the United States, prolonged by the United States, denied by the United States because they called it the Syrian civil war. There was nothing civil about it. This was a war by the CIA and Mossad to create a government that would not back the Palestinian people. Well, the long and the short of it is that since 1996, Iran has been the prime target for Greater Israel proponents. And when the war, this current war, started on February 28th, 2026, when Israel and the United States attacked Iran in a completely unprovoked war of aggression, completely illegal, completely fatuous, and a failure. When they did that, Netanyahu tweeted, "This is my dream of 40 years." And I read that and I was taken aback because I had always said it was his dream of 30 years because I didn't know what his dream was for the 10 years before he became prime minister. But this is his dream of 40 years. Well, my point has been, Netanyahu, go home, take your own dream away from the United States. And to the United States, Greater Israel is not an American project. It's not in America's interest. It's not according to morality. It is not according to theology. It is not according to international law. It's disgusting. It's perpetual war. And why the United States backs this is a disgrace. It's because of lobbying and people who are not thinking straight, and big money in campaigns, and tens of millions of Protestant evangelical voters looking for the end of times, and many odd things. I live in a kind of crazy country that is able to do this. But this has been a 30-year perpetual war for something that has no justification whatsoever. So that's what Greater Israel is.
Well, I was going to say, in the 1990s, though, this Greater Israel project, it had a good fighting chance. That is, it was backed by the only superpower in the world, which gave its unconditional support for this project. But since then, we've seen a multipolar world emerge. And I guess the Iran war was supposed to reverse this, restore US hegemony, but also Israeli supremacy in the region. But given the defeat there now, which doesn't only change the distribution of power, but also the United States, we see more distancing itself from Israel, not by everyone, of course, but groups which didn't utter this in the open in the past. I was just wondering, as a brief question, what will be this impact then on the Greater Israel project? I mean, what are Israel's strategic options now?
I sincerely hope the idea of Greater Israel is finished, period. That's my own hope. It's a disgusting idea. There are 8 million Palestinian Arabs, and there's absolutely no cause for genocide or ethnic cleansing or apartheid rule. And there needs to be a solution. And for many people, and it's quite plausible and natural, there should be one state, democratic and binational. And there are many examples of that. I could take Belgium as an example of the Walloons and the Flemish. They haven't always gotten along. There are deep cultural and sectarian and historical differences, but they make two states, by the way. They actually have 5 parliaments in Belgium to handle all of the different complexities of the multi-ethnicities. So Israel could become one state, a binational state, or what has been the international law and the intention of the UN General Assembly for, I would say, all the period since 1947, and then especially after 1967 again, 2 states, a Palestinian state and a state living side by side. Many people say that's now passé. I don't know what's passé. Either solution is possible. What is not possible, in my view, is an apartheid state or continued reckless murder by Israel, whether in Gaza or in the West Bank. And the violence in the West Bank every day is shocking. Israeli settlers dragging Palestinians out, killing them, expropriating their land, burning houses. It's just got to stop this absolutely inhuman behavior and this intergroup hatred and this Jewish power, which is actually the name of one of the political parties that is governing Israel right now, that kind of supremacist idea. It's just got to stop. There are 2 basic reasons why it may be coming to an end right now. And you emphasized one of them, very important. The United States and Israel cannot impose this solution on the region. They thought, well, Israel's invaded Lebanon in the past. It's weakened Hezbollah. Syria has been overthrown. The Iranian reach has been brought down. Hamas has been weakened, if not defeated, by the Gaza war and the Gaza genocide. So one view says that, okay, we're close. All we have to do is overthrow the Iranian regime. Turned out this was delusional. By the way, if they had asked you or they had asked me on February 28th, we would have told them that it was delusional. But they went ahead thinking this would be a one-day war. And it proved not only not a one-day war, but Iran is a sophisticated country, a large country of more than 90 million people. It's got hypersonic missiles, it's got space technology, it's got advanced drone technology, and it has the capacity to destroy a lot of the neighborhood. So it has a deterrent capacity, which it demonstrated, which is why there is this fragile, nascent agreement, because Iran closed the straits, demonstrated military deterrence. The U.S. had no military option that would have been able to avoid a destruction of the Gulf region and the world economy. So in the end, Trump said, okay, we stop this. And that's what this agreement is about. And I agree with Trump on this. Of course, I disagree with him on having started this war, which is fatuous, but I agree with him on ending the war, because what are you going to do? Nothing else. This really is a stalemate. So that's one reason why this Greater Israel Project, I hope, is on its last legs. But the other is internal to the United States, and that is that the U.S. has been essentially the backstop of the Greater Israel Project. Europe, for many reasons, does Israel's bidding to an extent, but there's much, much less backing. And the U.S. has backed it because the power of the Zionist lobby has been great, and it's been a kind of dual lobby. One is the American Jews and their relations with Israeli Jews and promoting this cause. And the second has been the Christian Zionists like Huckabee. And that's been a formidable lobby in the United States for 30 years. But what's happened, Glenn, is that with the genocide in Gaza, people watching this every day, people coming to understand, what is this about? And why isn't there a state of Palestine alongside a state of Israel? Why isn't there some solution to this? And hearing that the Arabs are saying, yes, we would have peace and normal relations if there's a state of Palestine, the Arab Peace Initiative, Americans have come to understand something is really wrong with this picture. And so in just 3 years, American public opinion has swung from support of Israel to support of the Palestinian people. And the view of Israel is hugely negative. And the attitude towards the war in Iran is devastatingly negative. Americans hated the war. They hated the war because it was useless, it was expensive, and it raised their gasoline prices. And it was cruel, killing 160 schoolgirls on the first day because Palantir couldn't get its targeting right. Come on. So the American people were completely disgusted by this. And Trump is also looking at this, and he's facing an election in early November. And what happened, Glenn, in my city, in New York City, a couple of days ago is absolutely amazing. New York City is the greatest concentration of Jews, American Jews. It's a very Jewish, it's not a Jewish city, but it's got a very strong Jewish population. And the voters of New York voted for the anti-Greater Israel candidates. We had one congressional primary election, 2 Jews running against each other. One was his current congressman who supported the normal, we love Israel, we support what Israel does. And the other, a city councilman who said, I'm running against what Israel's extremism, and I'm running against my candidate who is for it. So anybody that says this has to do with anti-Semitism or something else knows nothing. This was 2 Jews running against each other, and the anti-Israel candidate won in a landslide. And then there were two other congressional races, basically, that weren't two Jews running against each other, but not even Jewish candidates. But in fact, the candidates that said, we stand with the Palestinian people, won decisive victories. That's New York City. This is happening across the United States. I keep telling, I've said it from the first days of Israel's war in Gaza, and I've said it to the Israeli ambassador to the UN, and I've said it as many times as possible. Israel is losing its only support because of its extremism. Americans would support Israel, but they do not support Greater Israel.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. So, well, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you have a big day there in Turkey. If we had more time, I would have loved to ask about Naftali Bennett's comments about Turkey being the next new main threat to Israel.
Well, let me just say, if I can,
yeah.
let me
please,
just
go
add
ahead.
one word about that, which is that if you're based on a completely unacceptable, immoral, illegal project like Greater Israel, there will be opposition.